Good afternoon or good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our proximity tagging and group initialization webinar. We are going to wait for just a second and let everyone get settled in and join. We've got about another minute before we start, and we'll be right back with you. Hello everyone, and welcome again to the ActiLife 6 Proximity Tagging and Group Initialization webinar. We're going to go ahead and get started. I know a few folks are still joining, but we'll go ahead and get the webinar rolling. This webinar will be archived on our website along with the slides after this webinar is over, and so if you'd like to share this with someone, we will provide information about how to do that at the end of this webinar. Just some housekeeping information. The webinar control panel that you should see should resemble what I'm showing now on the slides. You can expand or collapse the little window to ask a question. You can get an area to type in your question, send that, and we'll do our best to answer that as quickly as possible. All attendees are muted by default, and we'll take questions via the question panel there. So just type your question if you have it at any time, and we'll answer it. We'll stop for a couple of pauses during the presentation and answer those questions. And if we don't get to them, we'll certainly address them via email. Presenting today, my name is Jeremy Wyatt. I'm the Vice President of Software Engineering. I'll be doing the presenting, and I'm joined by my colleague Brian Bell, who is a software engineer and manager here at ActiGraph, and he's also the ActiLife 6 product manager. Quick overview of what we plan to cover today. We're going to talk primarily about the proximity tagging feature in ActiLife. This is a new feature in ActiLife version 6.10 and later. If you don't have ActiLife 6.10, I would encourage you to contact our sales group about updating your maintenance. The maintenance for ActiLife is very affordable, and a lot goes into that product, and so contact them. We can get your maintenance updated and get you on the latest version pretty easily. But with regards to proximity tagging in ActiLife 6.10, we're going to discuss the Bluetooth LE protocol. We're going to discuss some terminology as it relates to tagging. We're going to go through a use case example, and then we'll talk briefly about distance estimation using RSSI that we gather from the tagging output. Then we'll cover group initialization, also a new feature in ActiLife. We'll go through it rather quickly, talk about why it's there, how to set it up, how to download devices using group initialization, and then how to pull those files into the feature extraction tool within ActiLife, and what we plan to do with that in the future. Talk briefly about the hardware requirements for feature extraction. For proximity tagging. We do require the use of the wGT3X-BT, and these are Bluetooth Smart enabled devices, and that's our latest device that we sell. The serial number on those devices begins with MOS, so you'll notice those on the back of the device, the serial number there. So check those out, make sure those are the device types that you have, and we sell those on our website and also through our online sales channel. They are Bluetooth Smart enabled, and so what does that mean? Bluetooth Smart is referred to as Bluetooth 4.0, also Bluetooth Low Energy or Bluetooth LE. It goes by all of those names. Bluetooth Smart is not backward compatible with classic Bluetooth. And so classic Bluetooth, you might be familiar with using headphones to stream Bluetooth audio from Bluetooth or high bandwidth type applications. This is not the same technology. It is quite different. And the focus with Bluetooth Smart is on low power, and the trade-off being battery life needs. So we do implement this technology. The range for Bluetooth Smart is about 50 meters. For the classic Bluetooth, it's more like 100 to 150. And I provided a link here for technical details, so feel free to check that out after the webinar. So what is proximity tagging? It is literally, in our use case, tracking a subject's interaction with their environment. And so we might be interested in looking at how a subject interacts with their environment, meaning not only how active are they, or inactive in some cases, but how often are they in certain locations within their own environment. And so we know that a subject, for instance, might spend time at home or in a vehicle or at work, and some technologies try to implement GPS to track that location and then correlate that back to various activities. This new system actually uses our WGT3X devices configured as either receivers, which are typically worn on the subject, or beacons, which are typically placed on these stationary objects or stationary locations. And these beacons transmit their location, or rather their serial number and their presence, back to the receiver, which then logs that data internally and stores it so it can be consumed later. Just a side note, this is a vertical relationship, not a horizontal. The beacons cannot detect other beacons, and so some applications where you might think, well, what if I place this on two different people? Can I see on both devices when they were within a proximity of each other? That's not the use case we're talking about here. A beacon is strictly a dumb beaconing device. It's not an intelligent receiver, and so we'll treat that as such in this use case example that we're going to go through. Let's talk briefly about some terminology. I've mentioned the beacons and receivers. What are we talking about there? With regards to the device itself, we're simply talking about a normal GT3X-BT device that we sell. There's nothing different about this device. We don't sell beacons and receivers. They are simply the activity monitor that you purchase from us. By the way, it's the only activity monitor we sell now. And so you buy that device and you can configure it to be one or the other in one or the other modes. The proximity action is different for each device type. So a device configured as a beacon will broadcast its serial number and label at a rate of 4 hertz. So 4 times per second it is beaconing out its presence and showing the world its serial number and label, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. Receivers are looking for the beacons, and so for 1 second every minute they look for the presence of beacons and log that information. The data stored on a beacon is the same as it is on a receiver or any normal activity device. We record time-stamped activity data, that is axis 1, 2, and 3 raw accelerometry data, as well as ambient light. But the receiver devices also store the time-stamped beacon serial numbers that were detected within its proximity. And so that begs the question, can you wear a beacon as a subject? Can you put a beacon on a mobile object? You can. Just be aware that it will continue to collect data as a normal activity monitor, but it will not contain the timestamp data. Only the receivers will contain that information. And just a note on the battery life, a stationary beacon, you can expect about 27 to 29 days of battery life. If it's being worn on a person, that goes down to about 14 to 16 days. A side note about beacons, they can be plugged into a wall outlet to act strictly as a stationary object. And so if you wish to do that, that is an option. And of course, your battery life is not an object, or not a problem at that point. Receivers, however, about 12 to 14 days on a single charge for a battery. And beacons are normally placed on stationary objects. That's not required by any means, but it's just a normal use case as it stands today. And receivers are typically placed on subjects. So I thought it'd be a good time to pause here and see if there are any questions up to this point with regard to the terminology or sort of using proximity. And I don't want to get into too many detailed questions right now, just high-level questions, because I may answer what you're thinking in the next section here. But if there's any questions about the terminology or configuration, I'd be happy to take those questions now.
I could just send them in. There's not anything.
Okay. Yeah, we're not seeing any come through, so we'll go ahead and move on to the next section. Let's jump back to our case study that we started on momentarily ago. I've got a patient here, or a subject, who is wearing a receiver device, and we want to place some devices in their environment to detect their presence when they're around those objects. And so at the home, for our example, what we did is we set up a device in a beacon device in the subject's living room and one in the bedroom, and so that gave us some presence when they were in those locations. Set up one device beacon in the vehicle and one beacon at work near the subject's mouse on their desk. And so we did about a 70-hour study with this setup. Okay, so we did that study, got it set up properly, and ran the data. And so what I'd like to do now is show you how we did that preparation, that setup. So I'm going to jump into ActiLife and begin to talk about how do you set these devices up for these modes. But just briefly, the slides are here. It really is a reference for later if you're looking at these slides or sharing them, but I'll just walk through it briefly. When you set the device up, you basically plug devices into ActiLife just as you normally do for device configuration. But we now have an option under the Initialize button that says Proximity Initialization. If you choose that option, it will then open a form which allows you to configure devices in either the receiver or beacon mode. And so in the interest of demoing how that works, I'll just open up ActiLife and bring it to the screen and illustrate this concept. So I've got 5 devices connected here. If I click the Initialize button, you'll note that I have a proximity initialization option and a group initialization option. So if I click on proximity, I'm brought to a welcome screen, and this welcome screen covers the terminology that we've spoken about today for those people who've not seen it before. So we describe what we mean by the 2 modes, and we describe a simple use case similar to the one we've talked about today. You might have devices placed in various rooms of a home, and you're interested in determining when that subject came within proximity of those devices. And then we talk briefly about the data, and I'm going to go more into that in detail. But if I click Select Beacons and Receivers, I'm then brought to a prompt which allows me to set these devices up and configure them in the way that I would like to. Just like a normal initialization setup, I'm able to choose my start time for all my devices and my start date. I'm able to select which devices I would like to set as beacons and which I would like to set as receivers simply by clicking the arrows to move devices back and forth between the 2 panes. You can have multiple receivers. I had that question in our first webinar today, and so you can have multiple subjects and multiple beacons, so no problem there. Once those are configured, you also have an option to click Identify Device. If you have 10 of these plugged in and you're trying to figure out which one you have on your desk, if you click Identify, it flashes the LED, allows you to quickly locate it. Just another side note, you do not have to configure all of these devices initially. You can add devices to your network later if you wish to come in and add more beacons. You can do that. You do not have to have all devices present at the time of configuration. So I've set up my devices. I can simply click Initialize, and I'm done. I also have the option to go to Advanced Settings and set up my detailed advanced settings for each device. So I can choose my frequency. I can also choose the LED behavior and etc. But we'll go back and go ahead and I'm not going to initialize because I have data already, so I'll just leave this alone. So these devices have been configured, and if I wish to now send these out in the field, I can do that. But I'll go ahead and unplug a group of these devices to show that these devices are handled in group format. What you'll notice is that the device itself appears here, but I've also got a list of the devices that are part of the group. And so I don't have to have all these present, but if I did, I can see which one should be here. Okay, I'll plug them back in. Let's assume that we've now done this deployment and now we're ready to collect the data. You'll notice that in the mode area, I have a section that shows me which icons indicate which modes are enabled for this device. And so you can see for this particular device, the proximity tagging is enabled, and that's the tag on the end. Excuse me. And then the mode, whether it's a receiver or a beacon, is indicated by the blue or red icon. So that's just a quick reference. If I click, if I choose to download the data, I can simply download it from the receiver. I don't need to worry about the beacon devices since they don't contain any of the proximity data. But the receiver itself, if I click download, you'll notice that it will download the data. I'll go ahead and overwrite the data I have there. And I'm able to then immediately open up the AGD file that gets created. And from within the AGD viewer, I now have an option that says proximity export. If I click on the proximity export, I can then export this data immediately into a CSV sheet. So let's just open that data and take a look at it real quick. So the data that I have here, if I expand the columns, the data that I have here is one column per beacon detected by the receiver. I then have a minute-by-minute timestamp across the left column here that aligns with the data that I've collected on my receiver. And so I'm not showing any axis data in here. I'm not showing any acceleration data, but I could overlay that data in here if I wish. But for now, let's just focus on the proximity data. So as you can see, the receiver device detected, in this case, the vehicle, the device at work, the beacon in the bedroom, and the beacon in the living room. And then this other device right here was an extraneous device that we had in our room during testing, so I'll just delete it. But these values that we're showing in the columns are the receiver signal strength indicator. And I'll talk more about that momentarily. But just note that if you have a value in the column, that implies that this device was within proximity and was detected by the receiver and was logged in the download. So let's jump back into our PowerPoint here. So we talked about configuring the device. We noted that these devices are then grouped together within ActiLife, and I get an indication of when I'm missing a device in my group. We've talked about downloading and how to export the data from the receiver device. And I briefly showed this export panel, but since I'm here, let me make a couple of points. This export panel is available by clicking the AGD viewer, so I can click Finish Download. It's going to load my AGD viewer, and it's right here. I can choose proximity, and I'm able to get to this export prompt. Alternatively, from my Import-Export menu, I can click on proximity tagging, and that will load the same form. And from there, I'm able to browse to an AGD file to get that data out. This particular form has some information in it that's interesting. It's got the option to select a file of interest. It gives me a little bit of information about the date range in the receiver and how many beacons were seen over that period of time. And then for my export summary option, I've got two options here. One of them is disabled, but the main option that we focus on is the summarized proximity data, 60-second, and then the option to include the subject name in the column headers. And so if I've got a subject name that describes the location of a beacon, I want to include that in my column header, but you can exclude that if you wish. But coming soon, something that we're going to add pretty soon is the option to create log diary entries for each beacon. We have a help article on log diaries. I encourage you to check that out. But the idea here is if I create a log diary for each beacon detected, I can then filter out data in my data scoring tab of ActiLife to only look at, say, energy expenditure whenever I was within proximity of a certain beacon. And so this might be useful for applications where you're looking at kids on a playground and their interaction with each other, parents' interaction with children, and so forth. And so that option will be coming in the near future. We talked a little bit about the output, but let's talk a little bit more about that output. It is each column or each row indicator is the received signal strength indication in decibels. If you have a value, as I mentioned, that simply means that the beacon was within range. If you do not have a value, that simply means that the beacon was outside of the range of the receiver. The values that you see there are just the raw RSSI values, and that is the relative power of the beacon in decibels. You get one reading per minute and one column per beacon, as I mentioned, and there's no filtering or smoothing on this data. We simply log it if we see it. And so that's interesting because that makes proximity a good discrete indicator of proximity. This particular tool is not meant to correlate distance between nodes. It's simply used or meant to be used as an on-off indicator, as a true or false. Did I see the beacon or did I not? There are some correlation options available that we'll talk about at the end of the study to help you discern the distance from a beacon to a receiver, but at this time we don't advertise that that's a simple thing to do. Just know that it's there and it is available, but it's challenging. So we've covered a lot here. Let's take a little bit further look at the data that I collected in that case study that we looked at earlier. So I've gone out, I've collected the data, I've downloaded the data from the receiver, and now I'm plotting this data in my own Excel graph as just a true or false. Did I see these devices or did I not, and when did I see them? So I just overlaid the activity data in gray with the proximity indicators in various colors at various levels, and I'm displaying a single 24-hour graph of that data right now. So as you can see, the data collection started at midnight on the 15th of February, and that device the device assigned to the nightstand by the bed was detected. The next morning, sometime around 6 o'clock, the vehicle beacon was detected, and then a little later in the day it was detected again. And so you can see the application of when were these devices detected and how were they overlaid. And so there's a lot of good, rich information here. You'll notice here later in the day the living room beacon was detected, so that probably implies that this person was in the living room, and we're doing something there. So let's take a little bit further look at some detailed data right here. So let's take a look at this area right here where it looks like I might have some overlap between the nightstand device and the vehicle device. What happened there? If you look at the data, what you'll find is that there's several minutes of vehicle device detection indicating that this person was in their vehicle, and then at 15:26 the nightstand beacon was detected, and then at 15:32 the vehicle was detected again, and then 36 the nightstand was detected again. So in surveying this individual, what we discovered was that they did drive home, they walked inside, walked through their bedroom, the beacon in the bedroom was detected, they then walked back out to the vehicle to get a bag, the device in the vehicle was detected, and then later they walked back inside again past the bedroom beacon and it was detected. And so we were discussing this before the webinar, but that's either a benefit or a problem, right? It depends on how you're using this application, but it does a great job of detecting those beacons, but you may want to apply some smoothing in your own data if you wish to filter out some of these anomalies, if you call them that, or depending on how you want to handle them. So just be aware that that's sort of an artifact of the functionality. Looking at a 78-hour graph, this is the entire file from the demo that we did. What you can see is the orange or yellow area indicates the daytime, and so you can see this is the first day that we looked at on the left, where we've got the vehicle information overlaid on the graph, and you can see that area we just discussed. But then you have each day here graphed a little bit further out, a little higher level. And so you can begin to see, okay, this person probably spent a little more time at home on the 16th. They were in their vehicle a couple of times on this day. So you get an idea of what happened and where this activity came from. And so it's pretty interesting to look at. If you drill down a little further, you can begin to see some correlation between the location and the data. So what I'd like to do now is just pause here once again for questions. I know Brian may have had a few come in, but I'm happy to answer those verbally. So if you have any questions, you can ask them now. We've got some more of the webinar to come, but I just wanted to pause momentarily to answer any questions. Okay. All right. So we'll move on, and maybe towards the end we'll have more. All right, so next question that has come up a few times during our demos of this tool is, can I determine distance from the RSSI value? So is there some correlation that helps me discern how far away a beacon was when it was detected? And so the truth is there's no consistent formula for all environments. Excuse me, all environments vary quite a bit, but study-specific correlation should be possible, meaning if you've got an environment that you've calibrated and you know very well the behavior of beacons with respect to the receiver, then you should be able to make some inferences from that data, albeit you know, a wide range of tolerance, but you should be able to make some inferences. And so to illustrate the challenge in that, we did our own test here at ActiGraph, and so let me just show you the results of that. We set up two tests, one here at our office and one at one of our employees' houses, and we set up devices, five beacon devices, four beacon devices and one receiver device, 30 feet apart, and then we began to move those receivers and beacons closer together by 2 feet every 60 seconds. And then we just let the receiver collect the beacon's RSSI values for a few minutes, and then we'd move closer. And so we did this from 30 feet all the way down to 2 feet with 2 feet increments. In two different environments, we reproduced the exact same test. And so what you see in this graph is here at our office, that test produced some exponential results that are somewhat predictable. And so what I'm looking at is on the graph, on the far left side, this is the closest test measurement. This was 2 feet away. And you can see the span of possible RSSI values from the four beaconing devices. And then as we move further away, not much difference, slight difference on the high end. And then they seem to drop consistently with some strange outliers here and maybe out here. But what you see on a trending curve is a little bit of a negative exponential. So as we got out to 30 feet and 28 feet, it was a little hard to discern between those two. We did the same test in a home, living room or dining area, and the same test produced different results because of the environment, we believe. You see the negative exponential, but then you see a rise in that exponential at about 27 or 28 feet. And we attribute that to just environmental changes, different wall types, different flooring types, different places for the signal to reflect and produce different RSSI values on the receiver. And so you can see the challenge in trying to use RSSI alone to determine the distance between receivers and beacons. And so one great application that may help is if I'm standing right in front of a receiver device and I'm standing right in front of a beacon device and I'm wearing a receiver, if I simply turn my body such that the receiver antenna has to receive a signal through my body, I immediately expect a degradation in that RSSI power indicator. And so it's hard to determine these distances with just signal strength. And so that's why we claim it to be a discrete yes or no. There are a couple of reference papers that are in this slideshow that we looked up that attempt to make a correlation between distance and RSSI. The first one is this Dong and Dargy paper, Evaluation of the Reliability of RSSI for Indoor Localization. This comes out of Technical University of Dresden, Germany, and they came up with a formula that correlated distance to RSSI. But in their conclusions, they said that the RSSI values obtained in the mobile scenario fluctuate considerably, hence the inaccuracies we observed rendered RSSI as the only input to determine the location of a mobile node in an indoor environment unsuitable, regardless of the estimation technique applied. So just sort of reinforcing what we're seeing and what we're claiming. And so there's a link to this paper. And then another paper that did a little bit better job was this accurate distance estimation using fuzzy-based combined RSSI LQI values in an indoor scenario. This is a paper that comes out of the University of Cincinnati, and they did a little bit better job, but they also used an additional variable called link quality indicator, LQI. We don't offer that output on our product yet, but it's interesting that they use this, and you can see in their conclusion that their algorithm was capable of precise distance estimation within the range of 100 to 400 centimeters at least 80% of the times, while reaching an accuracy as high as 100%. So that's pretty promising. And so I would encourage our viewers to do a little bit of research and find out at what level you expect to use the proximity tagging tool. We at ActiGraph will, of course, continue to evolve it and make it better, but we wanted to get this out there to our customers as soon as possible and begin to expose some options so that we can get feedback from you, the customer, and better understand how this tool might be used in the field so that we can adapt it to make it more useful for you. But it's available now, and I'd encourage you to give it a try. Okay. Okay. So we'll just pause briefly for another section for questions before we get into group initialization. Okay, so let's see what we got. So I had a question from Christelle. Can you repeat the part about creating the log, the children on the playground? Yeah, Christelle, I think I know what you're asking. So in ActiLife, there is an option to correlate log diaries into your data. And what that feature allows you to do is it allows you to include or exclude data based on those log diaries. And so if you're interested only in the time period that the device was worn, the log diary is the way to do that. And so in this example, you can see that this particular file in our data scoring tab has a log diary. If I click that, you can see that I've got an on and an off date and time when this device was worn. If I check the option over here in our data scoring to exclude, to use the log diaries, then the output in ActiLife will only contain data for the times when this device was worn. And so what we plan to do with the proximity tagging is offer the option to automatically create log diaries for each beacon. And so you might imagine that each time I detected the living room device, for instance, I would want my log diary to say that, okay, this is when the device was around this beacon. And so then I could then correlate that data into my main receiver file and begin to filter out any other times that the device was not around that living room device. And so you might see some applications there. And so I think that may answer your question. If not, let me know. I'm happy to try again. Okay. I had a question from Wilshaw. Is there a certain orientation the ActiGraph must be in for setting it up as a beacon? We recommend that the device be set up such that the face of the device is facing outward. The orientation up, down, left, right doesn't matter so much, but you'll notice in our earlier slide, and I'll pull that up here, you'll notice that these devices we're mounted facing outward on the wall. That's a pretty good layout because that prevents the backside of the device from blocking the signal. And so rather than laying them flat on a table, this is a little bit better option here. But it also depends on what resolution you hope to get and other factors. But hope that helps answer your question. Okay, I had another question. Are there plans to enable one device to act as both a beacon and a receiver? From Jason asking that question. Yeah, so he comments also that currently the only way to have to detect proximity of people from each other is to have subjects wear two devices. Yeah, Jason, that's a great question. It was asked earlier in the first webinar, and the way it was asked was, couldn't we just have the device act as a beacon for 59 seconds and then have it look for other beacons for 1 second? Yeah, that's something we're going to explore because honestly, we looked at doing that initially, and I think there must have been some hardware technical challenges with that, with getting the firmware to work properly. And so I'm going to defer to our hardware department. I'm really the software department here, but I'll defer to them to look at that and discern whether that's an option or not. But that's a great question. It's been asked twice today, so I think it's definitely something we need to look into. So thank you for that. Okay, a couple more questions coming in. I think I'm going to go ahead and move on and then come back to these. And Brian, if you want to continue to try to answer some of those, please do. And if at the end of the webinar after this next section, I'll come back and verbally answer some more questions. So please keep them coming, and they're always helpful, and they help us definitely to make better decisions. So keep those questions coming. Let me jump back. I want to talk briefly about group initialization. This is another feature in ActiLife. It's not too unlike the proximity tagging initialization, but the purpose is a little different. The purpose of group initialization is to allow multiple sensors to act as a single-time synchronized sensor. And so the use case that we envision here is that some of our clients are placing multiple devices on a single subject and looking at pattern recognition or fuzzy logic to determine what type of activities they were doing. And so how do we handle that? And so just talk briefly about how we do that or where our plans are. Similar to proximity, when you click initialize, you're given a new group initialization panel. Excuse me. And you're able to set devices up with various labels as part of a sensor network. And then you're able to name that group. And all that really does at this time is group those devices together, similar to what we showed earlier. So let's show that. So I've got multiple devices plugged in here. I click initialize, I'm once again given a welcome screen that describes the various options here. So I'm able to name the group, provide a label, then download and analyze the files. And so let's just see how that works. From the initialization panel, you can see it's similar to the proximity panel, except I only have one group. And so I can name this group any network I want to call it, maybe body network. I can then name all of the devices in this group after some limb. So once I've set those labels, I can also identify the device if it's on the table and I want to figure out, I want to stick a label on it, for instance, or set it up to be placed on the subject. I can go ahead and find those by just clicking the identify, and it's going to flash the LED on the device. I can set a start time and a start date, and of course I can set up advanced options if I wish to do that. I can change the collection frequency, the LED control mode. I can set the wireless options. I can set it to collect heart rate if I wish. All of those options are available here in the advanced settings, but for now we'll just set them up as default. When I click Initialize 5 devices, what you'll see is that it will go through and initialize those, and when they're finished it will tell me that it's finished. And now the group name is named after the network that I created, so body network is what we have here. And what you'll notice is, I'll just unplug 4 of these that are plugged into a hub. You'll notice that even though I've only got one device in the group connected, it knows that there are 4 other devices in this group and tells me that they are not loaded. And so the behavior for the files that I download are similar. So if I download data from this particular device and I bring that into our feature extraction tab, what you'll notice is that if I'm missing a device from that network, ActiLife will tell me so. And so at this time, that's basically what we do. Our next step with feature extraction is to allow these devices to produce a single output that represent, for instance, the feature information for that particular person at that point in time as a single unit. And so for those of you who have not seen feature extraction, what this allows me to do is extract some features from my raw data to look at the behavior or just the feature set over a period of time. And so perhaps I'm interested for this entire sensor network in looking at the x-axis, the min and max values in 1-second windows for the entire file. That might be a feature that's useful in my fuzzy logic algorithm. So I can now do that, or will be able to do that for multiple sensors simultaneously, thereby producing some kind of neural pattern that might indicate some behavior better than a single device could do. So I'm really interested in hearing your applications for this. If you have some ideas or use cases that you think would be helped by this group initialization feature. The entire point of this tool is to make your lives easier, and so we'd love to hear from you and understand how you might use this feature, or if you can think of an adaptation of this that may be a little different than what we've done that might be helpful. We would love to hear your opinion on that. So. I want to mention just here at the end, we now have an ActiLife mobile available. It's currently available in iOS, available for Android. I'm sorry, for iPhone 4S and up. And this particular application is simply listing devices wirelessly, initializing those devices and capturing the status. We are moving into some more advanced features for that. But first, we've got an Android app coming out next week that does the exact same thing. And so by next week, you'll have Android and Apple ActiLife mobile applications available. Just a note for the Android people, this supports Android 4.3 and up only, simply because the protocol stack is Bluetooth LE, and the older versions of Android do not natively support that. So. I also wanted to mention to our clients that are listening that we do now make our study admin tool, our study admin portal is now available to our research group. And so if you haven't seen the study admin web portal, I encourage you to get on our website and read about it. It's really a logistics management tool. It allows you to quickly deploy multiple devices in multiple locations and capture data from those devices from those locations very quickly, very easily. The training is literally 20 to 30 seconds to show someone how to set a device up and deploy it. And so that is available if you're doing a large study across multiple sites and you're interested in data integrity and the health of your data. This is a great tool for doing that. There is some built-in analytics on the tool, and we are getting ready to provide a mobile application that allows your subjects to upload their own data from their homes. So that'll be a new addition and coming very soon. So I wanted to make you aware of that. If you're interested in that, please contact us. We do have a webinar on this that we did last year. We'll be doing another webinar before too long on some new features of the study admin, and looking forward to the great future that tool has. Just some end of meeting cleanup here. We do have documentation at our website, help.theactigraph.com. There's a ton of help articles there. There's a short survey that will open up after this webinar. If you don't mind, please take a moment and answer those brief questions. It helps us plan for future webinars tremendously, and your feedback really helps evolve our product and helps us in applying our product to your needs. If you have more questions, you can ask them now. We're going to pause for questions here in a moment. Or if we don't get to it, you can email us at support@actigraphcorp.com, and there's also a help form on our website that's a little bit easier to navigate than just a regular email. It gives you some info about what we need to answer your questions. So with that, I'll pause and see if we have any questions that we need to get to. Brian, any in particular you want to answer here?
I was working on the integration and data storing question.
Okay.
And there was another one about the mobile and recommit.
Okay. Are we able to overlay? Nora's asking, are we able to overlay the proximity data with the access data in the data scoring tab? So Nora, great question. You probably saw the graph that I showed earlier. That was a graph that I put together just to demonstrate how this tool works. And so this particular graph, right now, that's a manual process. I just put that together by overlaying the export with my data. And Brian's answered your question there too. But right now in data scoring, we don't have a way to overlay the proximity data or to filter out the proximity data. That was what we were talking about earlier about the option to export log diaries that's coming in the near future. So thanks for mentioning it, and we're heading there as quickly as we can. Had another question about from Wilshaw about any guidelines to reduce interference. We don't currently have any guidelines because of the uniqueness of each environment. The guideline that we have on our website is that we encourage users to mount the devices at subject chest height with the front of the device facing outward. We found in our testing that does help us, but with regards to anything else to reduce interference, we do not currently have any information on that. We are using the standard Bluetooth stack, and so if you visit bluetooth.org, you'll find that they may have some indication of ways you can reduce interference in your environment. I don't see any other pending questions. Here's one from Harry. Is the group initialization available in the iOS app? Not at this time, Harry. It's a great question. Another question from Mike. Any plans to allow the receiver to be linked to multiple Bluetooth devices in addition to the beacons for capturing of data from different data sources? Yeah, so for instance, blood glucose monitor and such. We've talked about that, Mike, but right now there are no plans to do that simply because we would have to pick one device to do that because the protocols to communicate with those can be quite different, and the data that they output can be quite different. And so what we would probably do rather than let our device talk to those devices is basically the first thing we would do along those lines is allow our mobile application to communicate with those other devices to help amalgamate some of those data types.
He asked about whether smartphone could be used as a receiver or beacon earlier, and I just told him that we currently didn't have that. But.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I appreciate everyone joining today, and thank you for taking time out of your day. I know everyone's busy, so thanks for taking a moment to talk with us and to check out our proximity tagging option. This webinar will be available on our website. If you visit ActiGraphCorp.com, you will find that there's a study admin, a webinar section on there. So just click there, and on the support page, right here there is a webinars link. You'll see that this webinar will appear there by this time next week. It'll be there. So just visit there, share that with your friends, and then when you click View Details, we'll add the link to these slides so that you can download those and share those as well. So thanks again for attending, everybody, and hope everyone has a great remainder of the day.